The morning sun rose over the golden wheat fields of New Seoul, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. Governor Dae-ho Kim stood on his office balcony, watching the farmers begin their daily work. The sight always filled him with pride. 3 generations ago, this planet had been nothing but rocks and dust. Now it fed 500,000 people across 3 star systems. Beautiful day, isn't it? Bora Lee joined him on the balcony, carrying 2 cups of coffee. The chief engineer had dirt under her fingernails from working on the irrigation system since dawn. She never stopped working to make their world better. Every day here is beautiful, Dae-ho replied, accepting the coffee gratefully. Hard to believe my grandfather fought in the Earth Wars just so we could have this peace. Bora nodded, sipping her drink. Below them, children ran through the streets, laughing as they headed to school. Their parents worked in the fields, shops, and factories that made New Seoul thrive. Life was good here. Life was simple. That peace shattered at exactly 10:47 local time. The first sign of trouble came from Hyunwoo Park in the security office. His voice crackled through the emergency comm system, tense and urgent. Governor, we have unknown ships entering our atmosphere. Multiple contacts moving fast. Dae-ho set down his coffee and rushed to the security center. Bora followed close behind. The main screen showed 12 massive ships descending through the clouds. They were unlike anything in human design, all sharp angles and dark metal, bristling with weapon ports. Have they responded to our hails? Dae-ho asked. Nothing, sir. They're not even acknowledging our communications. Hyunwoo's hands flew across his controls. I'm reading massive energy signatures from their weapon systems. They're powering up to fire. Before Dae-ho could respond, the sky outside exploded into orange fire. The alien ships opened fire without warning or demand. Plasma bolts rained down on New Seoul like deadly meteors. The colony's defense grid tried to respond, but it was designed to stop pirates, not a full military assault. Within minutes, every defensive battery was destroyed. The power plant exploded in a pillar of flame. The spaceport disappeared under a barrage of energy weapons. Buildings that had stood for 50 years crumbled to dust in seconds. The aliens weren't trying to conquer the colony, they were breaking it. Get everyone to the emergency shelters, Dae-ho shouted over the sound of explosions. Send out the evacuation signal. But it was already too late. The alien ships landed in the smoking ruins of the spaceport. Massive doors opened and creatures poured out. They stood 8 feet tall with 4 arms and skin like gray leather. Their eyes were black and cold. They moved with the efficiency of predators who had done this many times before. These were the Vectari, though the humans didn't know that name yet. The creatures spread through New Seoul with military precision. They didn't kill everyone they found. That wasn't their purpose. Instead, they herded the colonists like cattle, using shock weapons to stun anyone who resisted. Children screamed for their parents. Parents fought desperately to reach their families. Bora grabbed Dae-ho's arm as they watched the horror unfold on the security screens. We have to do something. We are, Dae-ho said grimly. He was already at the communications console, sending an emergency transmission to Earth. His fingers shook as he typed the message that would change everything. War Prime Theclon stood in the ruins of the colony's government center, his 4 arms crossed in satisfaction. This harvest had gone perfectly. His warriors had captured over 15,000 humans with minimal losses. The primitives had barely fought back at all. Report, he commanded his intelligence coordinator Sultar. 15,043 captured, War Prime. Mostly healthy breeding stock. The young ones will adapt quickly to their new roles. Sultar's voice carried the same cold efficiency as his commander's. Resistance was negligible. Their weapons were centuries behind our technology. Theclon clicked, his mandibles in approval. Another species learns the price of weakness. Have you prepared the message for their home world? Yes, War Prime. We demand 3 additional colony worlds in exchange for these captives. Standard terms. This was how the Vectari Consortium had built their empire across 40 star systems. They would arrive at a peaceful world, capture as many inhabitants as possible, then demand tribute from the victim's government. Most species paid rather than see their people enslaved. Those who refused watched their captured families disappear into the consortium's vast slave markets. It was a system that had worked for 300 years. The human captives were loaded into the slave ships like cargo. Families were separated deliberately. It made them easier to control. Governor Deho found himself chained next to Bora in the dark hold of the largest ship. "Did your message get through?" she whispered. "I think so," Deho replied. "Right, before they destroyed the communications array. Around them, other colonists wept or sat in stunned silence. These were farmers and engineers, teachers and shopkeepers. They had never expected to face anything like this. Some prayed. Others simply stared at nothing, their minds unable to process what had happened. "What do you think Earth will do?" Bora asked. Deho thought of his grandfather's stories about the Earth Wars, about humans who fought against impossible odds and never gave up. "I don't know," he said honestly, "but I know they won't abandon us." High above them, War Prime Teclon reviewed the intelligence reports on humanity, a young species, barely 300 years in space. No major military victories, no reputation for violence. Their colonies were peaceful, focused on farming and trade rather than war. Perfect victims, in other words. "Send the demands to their homeworld," Teclon ordered. "Tell them they have one standard cycle to respond. If they refuse, we begin selling their people in the outer markets." Sultar activated the long-range communications array. The message streaked across space toward Earth, carrying terms that the Vectari assumed would be accepted like all the others before. They had no way of knowing that humans were different. They had no way of knowing that humanity had a simple rule. When it came to their people, you don't negotiate with those who take hostages. They had no way of knowing that their message would trigger the largest military mobilization in human history. The Vectari had made the last mistake they would ever make. In the depths of the slave ship, Governor Deho closed his eyes and remembered his grandfather's words. "Never give up hope, boy. Humans always come for their own." He just hoped they would come soon enough. Fleet Admiral Jihai Sun was reviewing supply reports when the emergency alert sounded throughout the Terran Defense Council headquarters. The shrill alarm meant only one thing: a human colony was under attack. She dropped her datapad and ran toward the command center, her boots echoing in the marble corridors. The main briefing room was already filled with the highest-ranking military officers and government officials on Earth. Defense Minister Tae-Young Choi stood at the center, his face grim as he watched the massive wall display. "What do we have?" Admiral Sun asked as she took her seat. "New Sol Colony, Kepler 442b system," Minister Choi replied. Governor Dae-Ho Kim managed to send one transmission before their communications went dark. He pressed a button, and the recording played. Governor Kim's voice filled the room, distorted by static but clear enough to understand. "New Sol has fallen. Unknown alien force, military-grade weapons, they have our people. 15,000 civilians captured, including children. They're loading them onto ships. Send help. Please, send help." The room fell silent. Admiral Sun felt her jaw tighten. In her 30 years of military service, she had fought pirates, rebels, and rogue corporate fleets. But this was different. This was an alien species attacking human civilians. "Do we have any other information?" she asked. Intelligence Director Young Suk Kim stepped forward. "We intercepted an alien transmission 3 hours ago. They're demanding we surrender 3 additional colony worlds in exchange for the captives." She paused, her voice growing cold. "They call themselves the Vectari Consortium." "Slavers," Admiral Sun said. It wasn't a question. "Yes, ma'am. Our analysis suggests they've been operating in this region for centuries. They capture civilians, then extort their governments for tribute or territory." Defense Minister Choi looked around the room at the assembled officers. "Recommendations?" General Wu Jin Han, commander of the Colonial Marines, spoke first. "We mobilize everything we have. Full military response." "Agreed," Admiral Sun said immediately. "But we need more than a simple rescue mission. If we only save New Sol, they'll just hit another colony next week." Minister Choi nodded slowly. "What are you suggesting, Admiral?" Complete elimination of the threat. We find every Vectari military asset and destroy it. We make sure they never target humans again. Admiral Sun's voice was steady, but her eyes burned with cold fury. We don't negotiate with slavers. The room erupted in discussion. Some officials worried about starting a war with an unknown alien power. Others argued for attempting diplomatic contact first. Admiral Sun listened to the debate for exactly 60 seconds before standing. With respect, Minister, we're wasting time while our people suffer in alien prison ships. I recommend immediate implementation of Protocol Omega. Protocol Omega was humanity's total war authorization. It had been created after the corporate wars, when Earth's colonies were threatened by massive private armies. Once activated, it gave the military complete authority to use any means necessary to protect human civilians. It had never been used against an alien power. Minister Choi looked around the room one more time. All in favor of Protocol Omega authorization? Every time, hand rose. Motion carried. Admiral Sun, the fleet is yours. Within 1 hour, Admiral Sun was aboard her flagship, the TDS Indomitable, as it prepared for immediate departure. The massive dreadnought was the pride of the human fleet, armed with the latest plasma cannons and quantum torpedoes, but she wouldn't be going alone. Captain Min Ho Jiang's heavy cruiser TDS Iron Will was already moving to join the formation. Captain Yoon Ji Yoon's experimental stealth ship TDS Ghost Protocol had departed an hour earlier to scout ahead. Across human space, every available warship received the same emergency order. Rendezvous at New Seoul immediately. Fleet status report, Admiral Sun ordered as she settled into her command chair. 87 ships confirmed joining the formation, her operations officer replied. More arriving every hour. This will be the largest human fleet ever assembled. Admiral, Sun nodded. Good. The Vectari wanted to prey on peaceful colonists? They were about to learn what happened when you threatened humanity's children. Captain Yoonji stood on the bridge of the TDS Ghost Protocol as her ship slipped through hyperspace toward the Vectari territory. The Ghost Protocol was humanity's most advanced vessel, equipped with experimental cloaking technology that made it nearly invisible to most sensors. Her mission was simple: find the captured colonists and gather intelligence on Vectari military strength. What she found would determine how the main fleet approached the rescue operation. Captain, we're approaching the target system, her navigation officer reported. Take us out of hyperspace at minimum safe distance. Engage full stealth protocols. Yoonji moved to the sensor station. What are we looking at? The main screen showed the new Sol system, but it looked very different now. Alien ships moved in formation around the planet. A massive space station had been deployed in orbit, bristling with weapons and docking ports. I count 47 Vectari warships, the sensor officer reported. Various classes, but all heavily armed. That station appears to be some kind of mobile command base. Yoonji studied the display. The aliens had moved fast, turning New Seoul into a fortified position. They obviously expected some kind of response from Earth, but from the casual way, their ships patrolled. They weren't too worried about it. That was their first mistake. Any sign of our people? She asked. Scanning. Yes, ma'am. Large concentrations of human life signs aboard 3 of their vessels. They're keeping our colonists in the cargo holds. Yoonji felt her hands clench into fists. These creatures had taken farmers and children and locked them in cargo holds like animals. Begin detailed scans of their ship designs and weapon systems. Admiral Sun will want to know exactly what we're up against. Meanwhile, the main human fleet continued to grow. Ships arrived from every corner of human space, not just military vessels but armed merchant ships, colonial patrol craft, even corporate security fleets. Word had spread through the colonies. Aliens had taken human civilians. Every human ship captain with weapons wanted to help bring them home. Admiral Sun watched the fleet formation with satisfaction. 93 ships now, with more still coming. The Vectari might be experienced slavers, but they had never faced anything like this. Admiral, incoming message from Vectari Command, her communications officer reported. Put it on screen. The alien that appeared was clearly a high-ranking military officer. though his species was unlike anything in human databases. 4 arms, gray skin, and cold black eyes that showed no emotion. "I am War Prime Theclon of the Vectari Consortium," the creature said in accented but understandable English. "You have received our terms. Surrender 3 colony worlds, and your people will be returned unharmed. Refuse, and they will be sold in the outer markets. You have one of your days to decide." The transmission ended. Admiral Sun sat in silence for a moment, then activated the fleet-wide communications channel. "All ships, this is Admiral Sun. You've all heard the alien demands. Here is our response." She paused, making sure every captain in the fleet could hear her clearly. "We don't negotiate with slavers. We don't bargain for our people's lives, and we don't surrender 1 inch of human space to alien pirates." Her voice grew harder with each word. "We're going to New Sol, and we're bringing our people home. Any Vectari ships that get in our way will be destroyed. Any Vectari who surrenders will be treated according to the laws of war. Any Vectari who harms our civilians will answer to human justice." She leaned forward in her command chair. "All ships, prepare for hyperspace jump. We leave for New Sol in 1 hour." Across the fleet, 93 ships began final preparations for war. Their crews were farmers' sons and daughters, merchants and miners, teachers and engineers who had joined the military to protect the colonies they loved. The Vectari had no idea what was coming for them. The Vectari processing facility was hidden inside a massive asteroid, carved out over decades to break the spirits of new slaves. War Prime Theclon stood in the main control room, watching his latest captives through security monitors. The humans were proving more troublesome than expected. Most species gave up hope within the first few days. They would sit in their cells, crying and begging for mercy. Not these humans. Even after 3 days of imprisonment, they were still trying to organize themselves, still looking for ways to escape. "The human leader continues to cause problems," Sultar reported. "This Governor Deho refuses to cooperate. He keeps encouraging the others to resist." Theclon clicked his mandibles in annoyance. "Increase his isolation period, and separate him from the engineer female. They seem to strengthen each other's resolve." Through the monitors, he could see Governor Deho being dragged to a smaller cell. The human didn't struggle. He was too smart for that. But his eyes never stopped searching for weaknesses in the facility's design. This one had been a soldier once, Theclon realized. That explained his stubborn refusal to break. In another section of the facility, Bo-Ra-Lee was trying to memorize the layout of the power system she glimpsed through doorways. As the colony's chief engineer, she understood that every station needed weak points. Even this alien prison had to have vulnerabilities. "Stay strong," she whispered to the other captives around her. "Earth will come for us." "How can you be so sure?" asked Dong-Hyun Kang, the colony's doctor. His medical supplies had been taken, leaving him helpless to treat the injuries caused by Vectari shock weapons. "Because humans don't abandon their own," Bo-Ra replied firmly. "They'll come." She was right, though she didn't know how close help already was. Captain Yunji's stealth ship Ghost Protocol drifted silently through the asteroid field, its advanced cloaking systems making it invisible to Vectari sensors. For 2 days, she had been mapping the enemy positions and searching for the prisoners. "Captain, I'm reading massive life sign concentrations from asteroid designation 77 Alpha," reported her sensor operator, So-Young Lim. "The energy signature suggests it's been heavily modified." "That's our target," Yunji said. "Begin detailed scans. I want to know everything about that facility. How many guards, what kind of weapons, and most importantly, where they're keeping our people." The scans revealed a horrifying truth. The asteroid wasn't just a prison. It was a slave-breaking facility designed to destroy the will of captured beings. Torture chambers, isolation cells, and worse. The humans were being held in the deepest levels, where escape would be nearly impossible. "Send everything to Admiral Sun," Captain Yunji ordered. "Include my tactical assessment. We're going to need a precision strike to avoid civilian casualties." Light years away, the main human fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of Vectari territory. Admiral Sun stood on the bridge of the Indomitable, studying the intelligence reports from the Ghost Protocol. 47 enemy ships confirmed, her tactical officer reported. They've established defensive positions around New Sol, but their formation suggests they're not expecting a serious fight. That was about to change. Signal the fleet, Admiral Sun ordered. Attack formation Beta. Captain Zhang's Iron Will takes point with the heavy cruisers. Destroyers form screening formation. Carriers launch all fighters. Admiral, her communications officer interrupted. Incoming transmission from the Vektari commander. Put him through. War Prime Theclon appeared on the screen again, but this time he looked less confident. His scouts had detected the approaching human fleet, and its size had surprised him. Your fleet is impressive for such a primitive species, Theclon said, but you are still outnumbered and outgunned. Withdraw now and we will honor our original terms. Admiral Sun's expression didn't change. I have a counteroffer. Release our people immediately, surrender your ships, and submit to trial for crimes against sentient life. You have 60 seconds to comply. Theclon's mandibles clicked in what might have been laughter. You think your crude weapons can challenge Vektari military technology? We have conquered dozens of systems. Your people will make excellent slaves once we break their spirits. 50 seconds, Admiral Sun said calmly. The War Prime's confidence was returning. You cannot threaten us with your inferior. Admiral Sun cut the transmission. All ships weapons free. Target their patrol line. Show them what human military technology can do. The first exchange lasted exactly 17 minutes. Captain Min Ho Jiang watched from the bridge of the Iron Will as his heavy cruisers engaged the Vektari patrol ships. The aliens had superior numbers, but their tactics were centuries out of date. They fought like they expected their enemies to be afraid. Multiple hits on target Alpha 7, his weapons officer reported. Their shields are failing. Concentrate fire. Disable their engines, but try to keep their life support intact. We might need prisoners for intelligence. The Vektari ships were well armed, but they weren't prepared for the coordinated assault of human fleet tactics. Where they fought as individual ships seeking glory, the humans moved as a unified force, each vessel supporting the others. One by one, the alien patrol ships were crippled or destroyed. Not a single human vessel was lost. War Prime Theclon watched, his forward patrol disappear from his tactical display, and felt something he hadn't experienced in decades: uncertainty. The humans had destroyed 8 of his heaviest warships without taking any significant damage themselves. How is this possible? He demanded. Their technology should be inferior. Sultar was studying the combat recordings with growing alarm. Their weapons are more advanced than our intelligence suggested. And their tactics? War Prime. They fight with perfect coordination. Each ship knows exactly what the others will do. Then we fall back to the processing station, Theclon decided. Let them come to us. They won't risk harming their own people with heavy weapons. But Admiral Sun had already planned for that possibility. Captain Yoon, this is Admiral Sun. Ghost Protocol is authorized for infiltration mission. Get inside that facility and help our people help themselves. Understood, Admiral. We're going in. The stealth ship slipped through the asteroid field, like a shadow, avoiding the Vektari sensor nets through careful navigation and advanced technology. Captain Yoonji's team of infiltration specialists prepared for the most dangerous mission of their careers. Remember, we're not here to fight, Yoonji told her team. We're here to give our people the tools they need to free themselves. Once Governor Kim and Engineer Lee know we're coming, they'll be ready when the main assault begins. Inside the EO processing facility, Governor Daeho was dragged to another interrogation session. But this time, something was different. As the guards pushed him through a corridor, he heard a sound that made his heart leap with hope. It was very faint, barely audible over the alien machinery, but unmistakably human. Someone was tapping in Morse code on the ventilation pipes. HELPIS. COMING. Daeho kept his expression neutral, but inside he felt a surge of fierce joy. Earth had kept faith with its children. The humans were coming home. War Prime Teclon studied the tactical displays with growing dread. The human fleet wasn't retreating or attempting to negotiate. They were methodically destroying every Vectari ship that came within range, then moving closer to the processing station. Perhaps, Sultar suggested quietly, we should consider releasing some of the captives as a gesture of good faith. Teclon turned all four eyes on his intelligence coordinator. We do not negotiate with prey species. But War Prime, perhaps they are not prey after all. The asteroid facility shook as the first human ships entered the outer defense perimeter. Deep in the prison levels, Borali smiled as she felt the vibrations through the walls. The cavalry was coming. The main human fleet advanced through the asteroid field like an unstoppable storm. Admiral Sun stood on the bridge of the Indomitable, watching her tactical display as Vectari ships tried desperately to form defensive lines. They were learning, too late, that humans didn't fight like the other species they had conquered. Admiral, Captain Zhang reports the Iron Will has broken through their outer perimeter. Her communications officer reported. Enemy resistance is collapsing on the left flank. Tell Captain Zhang to maintain pressure but avoid the facility itself. We need our people alive. Admiral Sun turned to her tactical officer. Any word from Ghost Protocol? Captain Yoon reports her team is inside the asteroid. They've made contact with Governor Kim. Inside the processing facility, the rescue was already beginning. Captain Yoonji's infiltration team had slipped through maintenance shafts to reach the prison levels. They found Governor Dae-ho in solitary confinement, but his eyes were alert and ready. About time you got here, he said quietly as So Young Lim picked the lock on his cell. Sorry we're late, Governor. How many of our people can you reach? Most of them, if I can get to the main holding area. Dae-ho rubbed his wrists where the alien restraints had chafed. But we have a problem. They've wired the facility to blow if they think they're going to lose. Captain Unji nodded grimly. The Vectari would rather murder their captives than let them escape. Can you disable it? Not me, but Bora can. She's been studying their power system since we got here. They found Engineer Bora Lee 3 levels down, locked in a cell with a dozen other colonists. Her eyes lit up when she saw the human soldiers, but she kept her voice calm and steady. Tell me you have a plan to get everyone out of here, she said. Working on it, Captain Yoonji replied. But first, we need you to stop them from blowing up the facility. Bora's expression hardened. Show me to their power core. While the rescue operation continued deep inside the asteroid, the space battle raged around them. Captain Minho's Iron Will led a formation of heavy cruisers against the main Vectari fleet, their plasma cannons lighting up the darkness. Target their command ship, Minho ordered. If we can take out their War Prime, the rest might surrender. His weapons officer shook her head. Sir, their command ship is positioned directly behind the prison facility. We can't get a clean shot without risking civilian casualties. Minho studied his tactical display, looking for an opening. The Vectari were using human prisoners as shields, counting on human reluctance to risk innocent lives. They had used this strategy successfully against other species, but they had never fought humans before. All ships, this is Captain Zhang. Implement. Boarding Protocol 7. We're going to take their ships the old-fashioned way. Colonel Wu Jin Han had been waiting for this moment. His colonial marines were the best boarding specialists in human space, trained to fight in the cramped corridors of enemy vessels. As the Iron Will moved closer to the Vectari battle line, his assault shuttles launched from the cruiser's hangar, bays. Remember, we want their command staff alive for questioning, Wu Jin told his marines over the comm channel. Everyone else gets one chance to surrender. The first shuttle slammed into the side of a Vectari destroyer, cutting through the hull with industrial plasma torches. Marines poured through the breach, their powered armor allowing them to move quickly through the alien ship's corridors. The Vectari crew had never faced human boarding tactics. They were used to long-range fleet actions, not close-quarters combat with heavily armed soldiers. Within 20 minutes, the destroyer had surrendered. Similar actions played out across the battlefield. Human marines boarded ship after ship, capturing alien crews and seizing their vessels. The Vectari fleet, which had seemed so formidable, an hour earlier was being systematically dismantled. War Prime Theclon watched his empire collapse around him. Half his ships were captured or destroyed. The other half were retreating in panic. And the humans kept coming, relentless and implacable. War Prime, Sultar reported, his voice shaking. We're receiving reports from across the sector. Human ships are attacking our installations everywhere. They're not just rescuing their colonists. They're destroying everything we've built. Theclon felt his mandibles clicking uncontrollably. How many ships do these humans have? Intelligence. Estimates over 300 vessels now, with more arriving every hour. They're mobilizing their entire civilization against us. For the first time in his long career, War Prime Theclon understood what it meant to be prey. Deep inside the asteroid facility, Bo-Ra-Lee worked frantically at the alien power core. The Vectari had indeed wired the station to explode, but their engineering wasn't as sophisticated as they thought. Can you stop it? Governor Deho asked, watching the corridors for guards. Already done, Bo-Ra replied, pulling a critical component from the control panel. But I've got a better idea. Instead of just disabling their bomb, I'm going to shut down their shields and life support systems. Give our people outside a clean shot at their command ship. Captain Yoonji nodded approvingly. Do it. The facility's lights flickered and died as Bo-Ra rerouted power away from the defensive systems. Emergency lighting cast eerie shadows on the walls as the human prisoners began their escape. Outside, Admiral Sun watched her tactical display as the asteroid's shields collapsed. All ships, the facility is secure. Captain Jang, you have a clear shot at their command ship. The Iron Will's main guns spoke once, sending a quantum torpedo into the heart of the Vectari flagship. The explosion lit up the asteroid field like a small sun. War Prime Theclon's last transmission was brief. How did prey become predators? Admiral Sun heard the words through the static and felt a cold satisfaction. Because we were never prey, she said to her empty bridge. You just made the mistake of thinking we were. The battle for New Sol was over, but the war was just beginning. Across Vectari space, human fleets were appearing at every major installation. The aliens had built their empire on the assumption that other species were weak, that they would always choose to negotiate rather than fight. They had never encountered a species that considered the taking of hostages an unforgivable crime. Captain Seung-Ho Lee, flying his fighter from the carrier Defiance, led strike missions against Vectari slave markets. Each facility liberated revealed thousands of beings from dozens of species, all held in conditions that violated every civilized law of war. This is worse than we thought, he reported to Admiral Sun after his third raid. They've been doing this for centuries. We're finding slaves from species we've never even heard of. Admiral Sun made a decision that would reshape the galaxy, signal all freed populations that they're under Terran protection. Any species that wants our help gets it, and any Vectari who surrenders will be tried for crimes against sentient life. The message spread through the sector at the speed of light. For the first time in 3 centuries, the victims of Vectari slavery had hope. On the prison asteroid, now converted to a temporary hospital, Governor Deho sat with Bo-Ra-Lee as they watched human medical teams treat the rescued colonists. Everyone would recover, physically at least. The psychological wounds would take longer to heal. What happens now? Bo-Ra asked. Deho looked out at the human fleet, still growing as more ships arrived from across human space. Now we make sure this never happens to anyone else, he said. Through the facility's windows, they could see the wreckage of the Vectari fleet drifting among the asteroids. The mighty consortium, which had terrorized this region for centuries, had been destroyed in a single day by a species they had dismissed as primitive. The galaxy was about to learn a new rule. Humans protect their own. And anyone who threatened, human civilians would face the full might of a species that viewed slavery as the ultimate crime. 3 months after the attack on New Sol, the former Vectari capital world of Kethmore looked very different. The massive slave markets had been converted into refugee centers. The torture facilities had been demolished, replaced with schools and hospitals. Human administrators worked alongside freed alien populations to build something the galaxy had never seen before. A truly free society. Haywan Park stood in what had once been War Prime Theclon's throne room, now converted into a coordination center for refugee assistance. As Colonial Affairs Administrator, she had the overwhelming task of helping dozens of species rebuild their shattered civilizations. The Rillan delegation is requesting assistance with agricultural technology, her assistant Jin Soo-yoon reported. They want to return to their homeworld, but 3 centuries of Vectari occupation have left the soil poisoned. Approved. Send them everything we have on soil rehabilitation, Haywan replied. What about the Thexari? They're asking for military advisors. Apparently there are still Vectari holdout groups in their system, raiding what's left of their colonies. Haywan nodded grimly. The destruction of the main Vectari fleet had been just the beginning. Scattered groups of alien slavers were still operating throughout the sector, preying on the chaos left behind by their empire's collapse. That's where Admiral Sun came in. The Admiral stood on the bridge of her flagship as the human fleet prepared for another sweep through the outer systems. In 3 months, they had liberated 47 worlds and freed over 2 million beings from slavery. But the work was far from over. Admiral, we're receiving a distress call from the Zelani system, her communications officer reported. Vectari, raiders are attacking refugee ships trying to evacuate to safer territory. Set course for Zelani. Signal Captain Jang to prepare the rapid response squadron. Admiral Sun's voice was tired but determined. How many ships are we talking about? Intelligence estimates 12 Vectari vessels, mixed classes. They're using old consortium tactics, hit-and-run attacks on unarmed civilians. Admiral Sun felt the familiar cold anger rise in her chest. Even after their empire's destruction, some Vectari still couldn't understand that the old ways were over. They would learn. The Iron Will and 5 destroyers reached Zelani system 6 hours later. Captain Minho found the raiders in the middle of attacking a convoy of refugee ships, their weapons carving through civilian vessels like they had no right to exist. All Vectari ships, this is Captain Jang of the Terran Defense Force. Cease fire immediately and prepare to be boarded. This is your only warning. The response came in the form of plasma bolts aimed at his ship. The raiders had chosen to fight, rather than surrender. It was the last mistake they ever made. The engagement lasted 4 minutes. When it was over, 11 Vectari ships were either destroyed or drifting powerless. The 12th managed to escape into hyperspace, but not before. Captain Minho's sensor operators had tracked its destination. Signal Admiral Sun, he ordered. We have another nest to clean out. Back on Kethmore, a very different kind of meeting was taking place. The former slave overseer, Victar, sat in a human prison cell, waiting for his war crimes trial. Unlike most of his species, he had surrendered when the human fleet arrived hoping for mercy. Now he was learning what human justice looked like. You supervised the torture of over 10,000 beings, the human prosecutor said, reading from a long list of charges. You separated children from their families. You sold sentient creatures in slave markets. Do you understand what you're accused of? Victar clicked his mandibles nervously. I was following orders. It was how things were done in the consortium. Following. Orders is not a defense for crimes against sentient life, the prosecutor replied calmly. However, your cooperation with our investigation has been noted. If you continue to provide information about other Vectari war criminals, the court will consider that during sentencing. This was happening all over the former Vectari territory. Human legal teams were working with representatives from freed species to establish courts that would judge the former oppressors fairly, but firmly. It was a massive undertaking, but humanity was determined to see justice done properly. On New Sol, the rebuilding was almost complete. Governor Daeho stood in the center of the colony's new town square, watching children play where alien ships had landed just months before. The colony was stronger than ever, but it would never be quite the same. Bora Lee joined him, carrying blueprints for the new defensive installations. The orbital platforms will be online next week, she reported. And the ground-based particle cannons are already operational. Good, though I hope we never need them. Hope for the best, prepare for the worst, Bora replied. It had become the unofficial motto of the rebuilt colony. That evening, representatives from across human space gathered for the formal establishment of the Terran Protection Protocols. Admiral Sun, still wearing her military uniform, stood before the assembly to explain what humanity was offering to the galaxy. For too long, this region has been terrorized by those who prey on the innocent, she began. The Vectari Consortium was only the largest of many criminal organizations that have treated sentient beings as property to be bought and sold. The assembly hall was filled with beings from dozens of species, all freed from Vectari slavery, all looking to humanity for protection and guidance. Today we establish a new principle, Admiral Sun continued. Any species that requests our protection will receive it. Any government that practices slavery or genocide will face human military intervention. Any criminal organization that targets civilians will be hunted down and destroyed. The announcement sent shockwaves through the galaxy. Humanity, barely 3 centuries in space, was declaring itself the protector of all innocent life. Some species worried about human imperialism. Others celebrated their liberation from centuries of oppression. But the message was clear. The age of the predators was over. Rethal had been a slave for 37 years when human marines freed her from a Vectari breeding facility. Now she stood as the elected leader of her world, addressing her people with hope for the first time in decades. The humans ask nothing from us except that we treat our neighbors with dignity and respect, she told the assembled crowd. They have given us back our freedom, our families, our future. In return, they ask only that we remember this gift and extend it to others. Similar scenes played out across the former Vectari territory. Freed slaves became governors, teachers, and leaders. Worlds that had been strip-mined for resources began to bloom again. Children who had never known freedom learned to play and laugh, and everywhere human ships patrolled the space lanes, ensuring that the darkness would never return. Admiral Sun received the final report 6 months after New Sol's liberation. The last Vectari holdout stronghold had surrendered after a brief siege. War Prime Theclon's successor, a creature named Veltar, had agreed to stand trial in exchange for the lives of his remaining followers. It's over, Captain Minho reported from the bridge of the Iron Will. The Vectari Consortium is officially extinct as a military force. But Admiral Sun knew it wasn't really over. It would never be over. Somewhere in the galaxy, other predators were watching human expansion with growing concern. Other slavers were wondering if they should test humanity's resolve. Let them wonder, she thought. Let them test us if they dare. Because humanity had learned an important lesson from the Vectari crisis. Sometimes the only way to ensure peace is to be prepared for war. Sometimes the only way to protect the innocent is to be willing to destroy those who would harm them. The galaxy was a dangerous place, full of creatures who saw weakness as an invitation and mercy as a flaw. They were about to discover that humans were neither weak nor unmerciful. They were something far more dangerous. They were determined. On 1,000 worlds, beings who had lived in fear for centuries now slept peacefully, knowing that somewhere in the darkness, human ships kept watch. Children grew up free because human soldiers were willing to fight for strangers they would never meet. And in the depths of space, carved into the hull of every human warship, was a simple message in dozens of languages: never again.